Short-term rentals are the old news. I feel like the new kid on the block is the midterm rentals. And today I have a person who literally wrote the book on midterm rentals, Zeona McIntyre, all coming up next. Welcome to the Cashflow Happy Hour podcast. I'm your host, Josh Baldovino, and on this show, you can join us live as we interview investors and share how they are increasing their cash flow. So grab a drink and let's get into it. Zeona, how you doing today?
I am great. Oh, I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Well, cheers, by the way.
Thank you. Got my little bourbon.
And I think usually it's either a red wine or an IPA, but right on. Well, just for our guests who are joining us and who don't know anything about you yet, but I'm sure we'll now just dive into everything about you. What's the quick origin story and how the heck did you get a book on BiggerPockets?
Wow. Well, that is two very different questions. So yeah, origin story. I'd say I started with short-term rentals back in 2012. And so I was about 26 at the time. And within 2 years of arbitrage, I was able to buy my first place. And then I was financially independent after those 2 years. And so that kind of spurred this reality for me that was totally different. I didn't even realize that you could retire before 30. I didn't know about short-term rentals. I didn't know about real estate investing. I really just fell into it with this experiment of short-term rentals. And now 10 years later, I found the whole midterm space and I'm super pumped on it. And so that's why I wrote a book on it, because last year I felt like not enough people knew about it. And then all of a sudden it exploded. And so it's very big now, but even so, I still think it's early days. And so there's so much opportunity in the space. I just want to get out and tell people about it.
Totally. I mean, midterm rentals, and I only see this right now. This reminded me the comment with Jesse. Hey, Jesse.
Jesse, what's up?
In our episode that we did with Jesse, at that moment, I thought, oh man, look, and this is back in 2021, midterm rentals has to blow up in 2022. And it totally has. It's on so many different BiggerPockets podcasts. There are so many people in the space who've either pivoted to it and or talking about it. And it's almost like that perfect asset class. So
yeah, well, I mean, is anything perfect? We're still in real estate, guys, so don't get too shiny about it. But yes, I think it's one of those weird things where people are like, oh, well, what's the best kind of asset? Like, should I do it with condos? Should I do it with single family homes? Should I do multifamily? And it's kind of like they all work. Mm-hmm. And like, where should I do it? It kind of works everywhere. You know, I mean, that's one of the hard things is that like you can't really lose. And so it is perfect in that sense, but there are ways to optimize it.
So just to give some context for everyone as well, what does the current portfolio look like? How many are yours? How many are you managing? All that good stuff.
So I stopped managing. I think we technically manage like one, but I'm slowly like pivoting out of that. But at one time I managed over 60 rentals in 5 countries. And so I really got good at out-of-state management. And that's why I'm not afraid to own out of state. I own in 4 states now, and some states multiple markets in that state. So that is something I have learned now. Thank you, Jesse. But I am trying to corral all my places to 1 market or 2 markets because like Jesse likes to say, you want to go deep and you don't necessarily want to have just one here and there. So yes, that is something I'm trying to do differently. But I am in Florida, Colorado, where I live, Missouri, and Washington State.
Okay. And out of the 3, which one's your favorite? You have to pick. Yeah, you have one favorite market, don't you?
I'm really into Colorado, where I live. I think, you know, when I started, it was just like, it's too expensive. I've got to get out of here. So I got my first house hack and then I went out of state. But now that I can afford it, I just like it here. And I really think there's a lot of appreciation potential and growth. And it's easier when you have something in your backyard. So why not?
Yeah, totally. And it's, I mean, people can start to, trade up into either nicer assets, nicer markets, things like that, just because obviously the tenant base probably changes as well. And I'm sure the contracts that you may get also varied based on location. But how did you get into midterm rentals? Or actually, hold on, let's back up one more step. What is a midterm rental? And then we'll get into how you got into midterm rentals.
Yeah, so it is a furnished rental that's rented out more than 30 days. So 30 days is kind of that sweet spot, hence the name of the book, 30-day stay. So often they end up being actually 90 days or 13 weeks because we are often working with medical professionals and they get contracts for 13 weeks. So that's kind of what you see as a norm, but anything over 30 days goes.
Okay. And at this point, just as a teaser for the audience, what percentage of your bookings are you saying are from contracts, directly from the agency side, maybe from Airbnb or direct bookings?
Yeah. So unlike Jesse, not many are coming from contracts yet. So I've done just a few so
Hmm.
far, and so majority of my stuff comes from. Ooh, what would I say? I'd actually say Furnish Finder at this point.
Wow.
I do get a lot from Airbnb, so maybe they're like 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm about this. Actually, no, I'm probably like 60-40 Airbnb and Furnish Finder.
Yeah.
Um, it's just that there's a little bit. Furnish Finder is a little bit more manual, but you have a little bit more control, I'd say, over the screening process than you do on Airbnb. We've all
And the
had our horror
dates,
stories.
you can kind of manipulate dates a little bit easier on
Yeah.
Furnish Finder. Yeah.
So then, how did you get into midterm rentals?
Yeah, so the whole time I've been doing short term, it kind of would happen occasionally. Someone would just book something a little bit longer, but I never really was intentional about it. And it wasn't until COVID when there was kind of this period at the beginning where everybody was going into lockdown. And so that was like early March 2020. I had a little bit of a scare. It was like all of my bookings that I had going for the next 2 months, where we were kind of ramping up for another good summer season, just immediately evaporated. And so I had to pivot. And I think at that time, a lot of people just closed their doors. But I had all these places out of state, and I was like, I'm not going to just lose money on them. I got to figure out another way. And so at the time, I wasn't sure if I was just going to go long term, and then I had to figure out a way to get people in and have them see the place. But I started seeing bookings coming in for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, couple of medical professionals, people coming in for emergency services. And I realized, I think I can do this. I think I can figure out a way to make longer stays happen. Yeah, but it was really like dark days at that time. I'm still impressed with people that were doing contracts years before COVID because they were really on their own. I mean, I'd always heard about executive rentals, but it just didn't seem big like short term, the way that Airbnb had blown up.
Yeah, and I feel like we're still we're still tipping off.
Oh, yeah,
If
completely.
2022 was when everyone was talking about it, I feel like 2023 will end up being the actual execution of it, but we'll see. Uh, and then how about just give us, as in those early days, what are some of the comparables in terms of the Airbnb numbers versus the midterm rental numbers?
Yeah, I find that I can get pretty close. So I think before I was telling myself that it had to be a little bit cheaper. So, doing a very rough number of like long term is kind of the market rate, and then short term is maybe 2 times market rate, and midterm is in this middle space of like one
Mm.
and a half times. But now I'm actually finding you can get pretty darn close to a short term rental number. And if you do those direct contracts, you can far surpass it. So I think there's a lot of potential here, especially while short-term rentals are on this kind of weird stall. I think they
Mhm.
will be for a couple of years through the recession, and they're definitely not going away. But I think that it's a great time to try something else.
Yeah. One thing I found too is in some markets, you can actually get more on the midterm rental side than you can on the short-term rental side, especially because you don't have that crazy occupancy swing for some certain
Yeah.
markets. So,
Yeah, I think you have to be really careful at how you're managing your calendar. And a lot of people just leave it open and then have whatever happen. But
mhm.
the people that are really strategic, they have a lot more control over it. And I think that's kind of the way to go. It's like if you can do short term rental in your market as well, open your calendar and do 30-day minimum, but then fill in the gaps with short term. Don't do it the other way around, where then all of a sudden you just have a weird 2 days in the middle of the month,
Yeah. Okay, well, how about let's just get really tactical in terms of short-term rentals versus midterm
Sure.
rentals. Love to get some hot takes here. Let's just go with picking a market. What are the differences, would you say, between the two when you're thinking about both asset classes?
Yeah, I think what people got really excited about in short-term rentals in this last year, so like 2021 was the year of short-term rentals, and people got really excited about the markets that had been OG markets. So certain beach markets and, the Smokies and stuff near national parks, because they had always attracted tourism and they weren't going to kind of outlaw that. Because I think what people were really worried about was regulations,
Hmm.
right? But now, as a midterm, I like to be a little more urban. I still would say that about a short-term rental is that if that urban market doesn't allow it, be on the outskirts of it, because travel I think is changing away from being as much of these like vacation markets, and it's more so people going to visit like family and doing more of the required travel, the business travel, and family travel, not as much the fly to destinations and the drive to destinations. It just kind of it moves down a tier what people can afford.
Yeah. And who is your tenant base that you're seeing?
Yeah, so it depends. So because I'm in different markets, I have different tenants. So there are markets that I have a lot of nurses, but Boulder, Colorado is a really tech town.
Hmm.
So I actually get a lot of digital nomads, people coming in to be at the local office. So like business travelers that are coming in as scientists or tech. Like we have a Google campus and stuff like that. So I actually don't get as many nurses here as I do in other places.
And are you doing something specific to attract the digital nomad traveler?
It's really just the location, and I
Hmm.
mean, I have a stand-up desk in one of my places. I really don't think that's moved the needle. Some people say, "Oh, I put monitors in so people can plug in and have their monitor," but we just have good Wi-Fi and we have blackout curtains. We're not really doing anything crazy, but I am really big on having cool, stylish furniture.
Okay. So the design for you is important.
Yeah,
Are you, do
big
you have a
difference.
difference in how you design your short-term rentals versus your long-term? I'm sorry, your medium-term rentals?
Not really. I haven't moved to the super flashy short-term rentals where people are putting like murals and stuff, but I've
Mhm.
definitely thought about it. But most of my places do have like a little bit of flash. Like they'll have a little more color, pizzazz in them than something else. And I do like having a little bit more of a theme. Like I have a place that's kind of like more Miami chic. And then I've got this one that we're going to be revamping in Colorado Springs where we're doing like a cowboy modern look. So there's some, I don't know, there's some fun, different flavor to it. I think when somebody is designing their own place, they might be a
Mhm.
little more beige on beige, but when you're going to go stay somewhere, you want to feel something different.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. And I mean, I'll just take this opportunity for myself. So the one that I told you on the pre-call is that we're gonna take over one in Lake Tahoe, which
Ooh,
I
that's
don't know if
nice.
you're familiar with that market, but
Hmm.
has a complete ban on short-term rentals. So if you basically didn't get locked into a short-term rental permit, you can't do anything under 30-day stays. And your point about the desks, how you haven't seen a huge influx was interesting because in my mind, I was immediately going to put a standing desk, monitors, keyboards, mouse in every single bedroom. And that would be
Interesting.
it's 3 hours away from, the Bay Area. And that's the closest place that the tech people can go out and snowboard.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, but obviously, anecdotally, you have experience where you haven't seen that huge influx. So I don't know.
Hey, man, I think it's all about the experiment, right?
Mhm.
Like this should be a lab and you should be able to test stuff and then pivot if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and a standing desk plus a monitor is $500 a pop. So it's not the hugest expense in the world, but
Maybe just put one in and then see if people are like,
oh,
"Oh, that'd be great if it was in every room." Yeah,
that is true. We're gonna have one room that's gonna have a double bunk, which ends up being the kid room. So you don't need it there, but
sure.
we'll find out. Okay. How about as we talk about designs, going back to this, how do you usually budget for your midterm rentals? I know some people talk about like a price per square foot. Does that change for you
Mm,
on a midterm versus short-term rental?
that's interesting. No, we don't do it by that. We kind of do it more by bedroom. And
Oh.
it's also based on if you're having somebody help you or not.
Hmm.
So, what I find is a good metric is and this might sound low, but I think 7,500 for a one bedroom and then another 1,500 per bedroom. And then
Wow.
there is a little bit of a flex if you've got outdoor furniture, that can be kind of expensive. So it just
Mhm.
depends. Do you have a patio space or not?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people will spend all their money on the inside and then the backyard kind of gets shoved in the corner. You're like, I'll think about it later.
Yeah, totally. I know that's, we'd have to talk to Jesse about this, but I kind of don't like the single family home because of that. It's like,
Mm,
well, now I've got to think about landscaping and outdoor spaces and all this kind of stuff. So I'm more bullish on condos, which is not typical
interesting.
for real estate investors. Yeah.
Okay. So now you opened up a new can of worms for me.
Do it, do it.
So not single family houses, one for the backyard and the outdoor maintenance that it comes with. And so
Yeah.
for these condos or townhouses, maybe, are you, and you already initially said a little bit more urban, are you
Yeah.
purchasing majority of these? Are you arbitraging? What's that kind of mix look like?
No, I'm all about purchase. So I did get my start with arbitrage, but I think arbitrage is an active pursuit. So it's very much like flipping or wholesaling, something like that, where you need to do something every time to get money. And when you own a property, it's like in the last couple of years, the properties were just making money in your sleep.
Oh,
And you just can't do that if you're arbitraging.
that's true. That's true. I mean, even on the worst months, you still get a little bit of appreciation. So no matter what, that's interesting. And then how about in terms of what size condos are you looking for? Are you looking for the one bedroom, two bedroom, three bedroom? What's your condo avatar?
Yeah, we do a lot of one and two bedrooms. And so there's different schools of thought. There's definitely people that are doing 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom homes. So
Mhm.
that's the cool thing that I'm saying is like you can really do any asset class. The reason I don't like single family homes as much is because you are paying utilities. And
Mm.
so I say either go condo where you have almost no utilities. You can have like shared utilities
Mm.
and then or go multifamily, like small multifamily, 2 to 4 units, because then instead of paying maybe 500 a month with all the utilities, you can split it between the 4 units and then it's each unit maybe 300 per unit.
Yeah.
So that just helps a little bit. And I prefer that.
So you're buying small multi now.
I want to. I have one, but it's actually a long-term rental that I think I'll probably convert to MTR.
Okay. Okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough. And then what about in terms of dealing or your lead source really? So you were saying that half right now comes from Airbnb and your furnish finder. Do you have any
Yeah.
plans to switch more to a direct booking model or to other platforms? What are
Oh
your thoughts
yeah.
there?
Oh, we're researching a ton on contracts. So there are a few websites that we've gotten just kind of maybe an initial 5 or 6 that we're going to start pursuing, but
Mhm.
it's such a weird wild west in that zone of just trying to even figure out what your pricing is,
Mhm.
because it can be so kind of ridiculous, I would
Yeah.
say. Yeah, there's just places where it's like, well, normally this would be like, I don't know, $2,000, but we can get 8. And it's like, how are you able to get out of your own way and be that outlandish and just put that price up there and go, let's see what happens, It's a little bit scary when you're like, well, if it doesn't happen, we're going to sit vacant. So, yeah, that's something I'm still figuring out.
Okay, well, just curious in terms of your whiteboarding here.
Yeah.
For let's just take one of your two-bedroom units, maybe in Colorado, since that's your favorite.
Yeah.
What would a long-term rental look like in a general market? What are your Airbnb, and then what you're kind of getting for your midterm rental?
Yeah. So this particular one, I own one in Denver that we got in July. And so that one could rent out for about 2,000 as a
Oh,
2-1, and it's a condo. And then medium term we're doing over 3,000, so like 3,200. And I think short term you could probably do 4, maybe
wow.
42. And so I probably can push that needle to like 4,500. And so
Mhm.
I'm going to start. Yeah, we're really testing things out right now.
I like it. I do like how this should be the lab. You should be experimenting all the time. What things
Mhm.
are you currently tweaking with as you're talking about that? Is it your pricing structure? Is it you in price labs, your calendar? What things are you kind of doing to optimize your properties?
Yeah, so tweaking markets, like I said, I am starting to like sell off certain places and kind of try to be bigger in one market because I want to be able to say, I have a presence. I've got 5 places. We can always get you somebody. And I
Mhm.
think in Colorado, I have an extra edge because I am a real estate agent. And so I can either go pick up a property pretty quickly, or I have a lot of clients that I've sold MTRs to. And so I can say, well, I can't help you, but this guy can. And so I'm not really saying no, I'm still giving them an outlet. Right. So that's important. We're really upping our furniture in this last year. We've been taking all of our places and doing a refresh with there's a girl on our team that does all the design for all of our clients. And so I've just kind of been taking her around the US. She's been flying with me to all the places that I own, and we've been really making those nicer. And I think that's seen a big difference. So yeah, there's a couple little levers you can pull, but design is definitely one of them. Professional photos, playing with your pricing. Yeah.
It, it's crazy how much information there is on how to start, a short-term, medium-term rental business, and people will spend hours and hours and hours and thousands of dollars furnishing it, but they won't spend $300, $500, $600 on professional photos. It's just the craziest thing to
Oh,
me.
that is the craziest thing. Because even if you have a dog, even if you've got kind of just basic furniture, the photos can really make it. So, yeah, you really need to spend the money on the photos. Yeah.
It's To me, it's a mandatory thing. It's not an
Yeah,
optional thought. Like, you have to budget in as you do your mortgage payment, because if not, you're
totally.
basically just throwing it away.
Yeah, so as a real estate agent, I've really seen that where you can hide a property that's not that updated with some cool furniture. And even beyond that, you can shoot creatively and make people just want to come in because you really have that one thumbnail,
Mhm.
right? People are scrolling around and you have this tiny little thumbnail, and that's your entry point. So you really need to have at least one standout.
It's I like how you talk about the thumbnail. And maybe let's actually, as we think about content, whether it be on social media and or your listings, whether
Yeah.
it be Airbnb or real estate listings to sell, people don't think about that thumbnail enough. What are your
Yes.
favorite things to think about the thumbnail?
Well, Airbnb is really cool because you've got the first 5, right? So you
Mhm.
still need the one that is like amazing, but then you can have the 5 others. It's funny to me because I had somebody the other day come to me and say, my place is just really not getting booked. I don't know why. Take a look. And the first picture was like this pumpkin on the front step on like a chair. And I'm like, what? Like everyone is immediately scrolling past.
Yeah.
And it's cool. It's a great house. It had a lot of other things, but what I like to do for the first photo is have something with a little bit of depth so there's some interest. So you don't
Mhm.
want something super zoomed in. And it's great in there to have some zoom ins of cool features, a nice sink and all that kind of stuff, but that can't be your first photo. So I like either a living room where you can kind of see a few different things that can catch your eye, or even just a really cool bedroom, but maybe from an angle. So you're really seeing like how big that room feels rather than something too close up.
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe the pro tip for me that I like to give people is, if you're vetting a photographer, whoever it is ends up being, a lot of times you'll get people who don't usually take real estate pictures, and because they have a nice camera with a nice lens and they get the blurry background, they'll zoom in on objects that are meaningless, like the pumpkin. And I think, man, this looks really
That one
artsy.
was so funny. I was like, I know, I already know what's wrong. 2 seconds.
Versus people, when they're looking for a place to stay, they really just want to say, is there room for 6 of my friends to hang out here?
Yeah.
That's it. That's all they really care about. And so you just have to plant them in that room. But if there's too many shots that are zoomed in, focus shots, it's just a waste of a picture. That's
Yeah. Something that I think is weird that I realized when I was looking for Airbnbs for myself is that I was really fixated on the couch. I
Hmm.
was like, is that couch just a futon or is it going to be comfy? Like, is this a place that I can actually hang out and feel relaxed? And so now when I'm like furnishing places or advising some of my clients, I'm like, oh yeah, you really need to have this couch that makes sense, that's comfy, that's inviting.
Okay, so let's break down that. Where are you getting your furniture? Like your couch?
Yeah. So we do a mix of like Wayfair, Amazon, and then we have it's kind of funny, but In Colorado, we have American Furniture Warehouse. And so I think it's in a few Western states, but there is one couch in that place. And we have that in probably 10 units. Like it is the couch we use for places. So even though they all have different designs, you know our place from that couch. So yeah, if you find a good one, it just works. But that couch I think is like $700. And couches can be a really big expense. And so it's like if you can find one that's stylish and reasonably affordable, cleans well, yeah, that one's good. It's
Well,
the
you'll have
faux
to
leather.
link me that couch because my
Well,
business partner is in
see
our
how far
Joshua Tree unit
they
right now, and
deliver?
someone just broke
Yeah.
our couch. So
Oh, no.
I know.
Okay, I will send you the couch.
And then for
It's
else
awesome.
who wants to figure out what Ziana's favorite couch is, I'll also add that to the description too, so that way you can see what her favorite couch is now.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I'm very curious if other people like it or not. Yeah.
okay, so another question about this, because you said in the very beginning that you are very comfortable buying out of state,
Yeah.
and obviously if you're in a few different markets, what is your kind of SOP in terms of launching a new unit, especially if you're not there for, I'd say, 99% of it?
Yeah, SOP, break it down. What does that mean?
Your standard operating procedures?
Okay, well, sorry. Yeah, so for me, it really comes down to, am I gonna have enough demand? And so I do like to center around hospitals because it just makes it easy.
Mhm.
So today I was talking to a manager in Memphis that I found through a podcast I was on, and we were just geeking out. And so I was like, okay, I want to hear about your place. So I'm going to just put up Memphis on my screen and just see what the area looks like. I never looked at Memphis before. And there's just an incredible complex. Like in their kind of downtown area, there's like 5 or 6 hospitals. And I'm like, man, this place is a gold mine. I haven't even gone into digging into what kind of hospitals and all that stuff, but just when you've got a whole cluster there, you know that there's going to be just a lot of turnover, a lot of people coming through.
Yeah.
And that's an experience I had in St. Louis where they've got about 5 there. And I had 4 places in St. Louis and people were just banging down my door trying to find a place. So that market worked out really well for me.
And what occupancy are you kind of underwriting your deals at for your midterm rentals?
Yeah, so I kind of underwrite it like I would a long-term rental. So I do 8%, but I find that the true number is more like 3, maybe 2 or 3. But
Okay.
8% gives you 1 month of vacancy a year.
Mhm.
So yeah, I like to write my numbers a little more conservative and then be pleasantly surprised rather than disappointed.
Yeah. That was actually thank you for chiming into the debate that I have with my business partner. We're trying to figure out, and I feel like we have better occupancy, but we haven't gone a full year yet. And obviously, I would want multiple years of data. So that's kind of a fun question I've been throwing to other
Yeah.
medium-term rental operators. Before I ask my next question, if anyone who's on this live has a question for Ziana, let me know in the comments below too. I'll ask them live. And actually, we have a few ones here. Some spam comments that I'm immediately deleting.
Okay, great.
Okay. How about in terms of setting up the unit and furnishing it remotely? Are you delivering the furniture to a receiving warehouse and then having a team bring it in, or how does that work for you?
So I have an assistant and she's a ninja. So we're actually going to Colorado Springs, which is 90 minutes from here next week. And so I had my designer like do all the picking of things online. And then she had a spreadsheet. And then my assistant, who's not local, she looked it all up and then she figured out what day she needs to order it for them all to come at the same time. So we're actually only going down there for 4 days. And we've found that we can do a whole 3-bedroom from scratch in like 4 or 5 days. And so
Wow.
this house is a little bit smaller and we're actually just refreshing it. So we're not doing everything. So I think we'll have a lot of time to just tootle around and have fun. But I think people, they almost have a crutch when they live in the same town. And I hear people say, oh my gosh, it was so painful. It took us like weeks and weeks and weeks. I think what you need to do is treat it as if you're going from out of state and just give yourself those 3 or 4 days. And that's it. You're just going to work from dawn to dusk and that's it. Get it, knock it out.
Yeah, 100%. Or just budget in some task rabbits or some handyman to come out and help you install everything, because
Yeah.
It ends up being a lot, especially if you're doing them just back to back to back to back to back. You kind of just want to
Yeah.
do the final touches and make sure that it's all ready for your guests.
Even just the amount of boxes. So I used to love to get everything secondhand. I'm really into like the environment and like recycling and stuff, but I found that you're so limited on style. So that was
Mhm.
just kind of not working out. And then you also have just a waste of time. You're running all over town, people standing you up, and then you're trying to get like a $10 off a toaster, and it's like it doesn't really matter. So we've just found that it's so much more efficient to just ship it all new and put it together, but you get an incredible amount of trash in boxes. And so I think the last time we had to filled up an entire U-Haul just with boxes to go to the recycling center. So it can be a lot.
Yeah. That's one thing that a lot of people, when you're building like your first one, that you don't realize how much cardboard is just cardboard and plastic and little foam things that you're just like, man, why?
I know. I know. It's so much trash. Ugh. Yeah, it's really intense.
Do you have any hot takes in terms of what midterm rentals would be like in 2023? Obviously, everyone's talking about it. You put out a book on it. BiggerPockets has blown up absolutely about it. Do you have any predictions for midterm rentals next year?
Yeah, so I got into the short-term rental game really early. And so it wasn't until maybe 2017 that it became Airbnb was a household name. And so I really think there's a lot more years because their biggest year was 2021. And so if we are kind of in, I think we've got like 3 or 4 more years. I don't think it's next year that it's going to be the biggest ever. I really think that we are kind of in that early 2018 or 19 phase. So I think we've got a couple years to grow. Like Furnish Finder is getting known, but it is not a household name yet.
Yeah, that's very true. I really think that we're just climbing the hill still, and there's still so much more to go for the midterm rental space.
Yeah.
How about let's pivot a little bit? And of course, anyone who's watching this live, if you have any other midterm rental questions, let me know. I'm actually going to pull up a couple that I got from Instagram. And as I pull that up, one more question that I have for you is how are you managing all the projects? Do you have an ordering system? Do you use Notion or Money.com? What's your
Yeah, we
productivity hack?
use Trello, but I mean, really, it's just my wonderful assistant. So, one thing I like to tell people is they get really hung up on the management costs, right? Like, if they're going to get a short term rental and it's like 25% or more for a manager, and then this midterm rental space, there's not a lot of managers, period, but they are usually going to be 15, 20% or more. But what I found is really just get yourself an assistant. You can get someone at $20, $25 an hour that's local, or you can find somebody who's a VA because most of it is just happening over the internet.
Hmm.
And so you can find somebody for $5, $10 an hour and just give them 10 hours a week. So it doesn't have to break the bank to have somebody help you.
Yeah. Yeah. That is one thing that I'm currently working on is trying to just push off more things and build out the team.
Yeah,
Uh, okay. So
it's
a couple
amazing.
questions from Instagram here is, and I haven't pre-vetted these. So if we repeated them, then we'll skip them. Besides Airbnb and Furnish Finder, how do you comp out in an area? So how are you estimating
Yeah,
how much you can get?
so I'm going to kind of repeat myself here a little bit, but I'm going to Furnish Finder. I know they said don't go to Furnish Finder, but I am still going to Furnish Finder and getting an initial view.
Okay.
Then I like to go to AirDNA, which is kind of a short-term rental. I don't know. It's like a
Scraper,
pricing, but
aggregate,
then it's also
data set.
like, yeah, statistics and data.
Mhm.
So I go there and I get a quote of what it could do as a short-term rental. And so I know that I've got just the basics of what people are charging in the Furnish Finder world, but I know I
Mhm.
can generally beat them. And then I'm shooting for this higher number. So I like to have that little range. That really helps me.
I like it. Okay. And what do you do in terms of rental agreements? Do you have that? Or on Airbnb, are you just doing just the usual air cover? How does that look like?
Yeah, I just do air cover on Airbnb, but I'm also not in California. So a lot of people freak out when they're in certain states that are a little too tenant friendly.
Mhm.
So I mean, you can still go on Airbnb and then just do a lease after if you need to.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be a hard thing. And I imagine that in the next couple of years, Airbnb is just going to have the next page that you go to and it will have a lease and it will autofill. So I'm hoping that they get to that place. But for my other stuff that comes off of Furnish Finder or direct booking, I just use Avail. So avail.co, and they will just pick up a lease for whatever your state is. And then you just fill in the blanks.
Gotcha. And then how are you vetting those tenants? Are you asking for income or employment verification? What does that usually look like for you?
Yeah, so we want landlord reference. We also speak to them on the phone. So my assistant's doing it now, but I used to do it because there is something about just even the way people communicate through text, like what you get in your email, you can often get a vibe and be like, "Ooh, this person feels weird. I don't know if I want to take my chance on that." So even talking to them on the phone goes a little bit further. So I like that. I like a landlord reference. If they are a nurse, then it's so much easier because they are already highly background checked. So I feel good about just seeing, proof of employment. So that's usually the basics. But if they're not, then we do background check because I want to know that they don't have any evictions, their credit's
Mhm.
good, there's no violent crimes. I'm cool with a little marijuana, but no violent crimes.
And how about on Airbnb? Are you doing the same? Are you taking them off platform to vet them, or what do you
I
like to do there?
don't. No, I basically just use reviews. So we don't rent to anybody who doesn't have a positive review.
Okay.
So you'll see people that have gotten a brand new profile in 2022. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
oh, I don't know about that. It's been around long enough that if nobody in your party has an Airbnb account, I'm just like, no.
It's fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple more here is, well, have you ever had any issues with squatters?
I haven't. And it's so funny because I feel like people always want to go to the worst case scenario and then tell themselves why they can't do it. They're like, "Oh, well, I can't invest because I heard about the squatter thing one time." But I know managers that have 100 units that they're doing midterm on, and they've never had a squatter. They've had one eviction ever. So it's like, I just think it's very unlikely. And sure, it can happen and you should still protect yourself. But it's sort of the same as having a long-term tenant. They could stay. But what I find that is a little more comforting about the midterm space is that they generally have another place to go. They have another assignment. They want to go back home. They're going to go travel somewhere else. And so it sounds like they already have an out before they've even gotten to your place. And that just
Totally.
helps me feel comfortable.
Totally. One thing that also helps me is that, especially for you on a condo where you don't have a back door that people can come in, really, is if you have a smart lock up front,
Yeah.
out of context.
Just
but
lock them out.
but if you have a smart lock, you can set when that code ends, and so
Mhm.
at a certain point, they're not coming back in to the house.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not legal, but okay. But I like it.
Is that not legal?
I don't think so. I
Really?
think you need to
I mean,
officially evict them. I mean, if it's a short-term rental, yes, but,
at a certain
once they're
point.
there over 30 days, I don't think that's legal, but it doesn't matter, you could still do it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, entertainment purposes only. Check with all of your whoever
And
you
then
want.
make sure you have the ring cam so you get it all on video?
Yeah. Okay, we got one here. Robert lives in San Antonio, large city, lives within 8 miles of 2 hospitals. When I look at Furnish Finder, there are other listings, but none of them have reviews. Is that a concern?
No, because people don't really leave reviews on Furnish Finder. It's kind of weird. So Furnish Finder, I think a lot of people get confused because it seems like another booking platform like an Airbnb, but it's really a lead generation platform.
Mhm.
And I think that's where a lot of people don't use Furnish Finder correctly. So they're just sitting around waiting for a great booking to come in and then they don't see any traffic. But what you actually need to be doing is going into your tenant leads and then reaching out to everyone. And that can be a simple template that you use that you just kind of send to every person or you put everybody on BCC, whatever you want to do. But you do have to take that little bit of an active step.
Yeah.
So I think he's probably in a great market.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
He also said, definitely illegal.
Great. I thought
Um,
so.
okay, so one more question is, how about pets? Do you allow pets? Do you not allow pets? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't because I don't need to. And I think that a lot of people do. And maybe they're feeling like their market, they don't have enough, and so they're like, well, we'll take people with pets because a lot of people are traveling with pets. They definitely are, but I just find that it's so much harder on the furniture. So we generally don't. But if you do take pets, definitely you can charge an extra deposit or a cleaning fee. Some people even charge pet rent. So definitely try to get more if you're going to do that.
I like it. Well, let's pivot a little bit just because you have a lot going on. You
Yes.
obviously
Too much.
published a book. You've been on BiggerPockets a couple times now. This is a selfish question for myself. And so what is the BiggerPockets story and how did you get onto their podcast?
Okay, so I live in BiggerPockets land, so that's the thing. So I am in Boulder, Colorado. BiggerPockets is from Denver, and there is a little community of financially independent people, and financially independent people generally do real estate. But if you haven't heard of Mr. Money Mustache, he is a blogger with a really big following, and he lives out in Longmont, Colorado. And so that is also where Mindy lives, who's on the BiggerPockets podcast. And so I knew her from that community, and I just bugged the shit out of her. So that's what happened. So there you go.
I like it. It's just persistent follow-up, basically, in PR terms.
Yeah, totally.
And then how did the book come to fruition? When did that idea get planted? How did it even get started?
So the first time I was on BiggerPockets was back in 2017, and it was a big, like the episode splash. There was no one else that had talked about short-term rentals until that episode. And so it just got a lot of good feedback, and they had come to me maybe a year later and asked if I wanted to write a short-term rental book. And I kind of flopped on it. I just didn't take it that seriously. And I don't know, I didn't follow up enough. I think maybe I was intimidated. And so 2 years later, Avery Carl came out with hers in 2019, and I died inside. I was like, oh my God, that was supposed to be my book. My life is over. What am I supposed to do? And then I realized that next year, it was like 2021 at the BiggerPockets conference, that they had not written about this midterm space. And I thought, I don't know, it's so niche. Like, would anybody even want to know about that? It sounds weird, but I pitched it anyway. And here we are today, lo and behold.
I like it. Well, if you want to learn all about, go ahead. You can get 30 seconds to pitch the book. What's it about? What's the big takeaway for people?
Yeah, so we wanted this book to stand on its own. So the first half is a lot about how to find a market and how to feel comfortable about analyzing the deal. There's a lot on financing because we do a lot of creative financing. The second half is a lot about operations, and that's going to be even everything down to like the mattress we like to buy. So it's really building out your team, doing a lot of out of state because both Sarah and I are out of state owners and operators. And I think the book is really entertaining because it's got a lot of case studies and a lot of personal stories of ours. And then we tried to bring in a lot of female investors. So a lot of the case studies are females, which I feel very proud of because there's not that many women in real estate. So I'm excited. It's a great book.
I like it. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
You have already lived, I'm sure, a lot of people's real estate bucket list of being on BiggerPockets a couple times now, having a BiggerPockets book, and obviously just doing awesome things and achieving FIRE, which is everyone's ultimate goal.
Thank you. Yeah, next TV show. That's what I want. So I'm just saying it. I'm saying it until it happens,
I like it. Would it be on Netflix or on HGTV?
Netflix. HGTV is going away. Actually what I want to do, I want to pitch to BiggerPockets that they just need to start their own channel, right? I mean, they have their YouTube, but like that should be their next thing. They should just have a TV channel.
What's going on with your YouTube?
Not a whole lot. Have you checked it out? I have a lot of shorts on there, and I need to get like diligent about recording videos, but there's a lot of things going on in my life. So I feel pulled in a lot of directions. Yes.
It's tough. On that same note of social media, I guess, what is your social media strategy and how has that impacted your business now?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I like to tell myself that like, oh, it doesn't matter. But what I have realized is there's such a power behind having reach. So the example is the other day, I have a seller finance deal. So kind of a creative off-market deal. and I posted it in my stories. And I'm like, nobody's even looking at my stories. Like maybe 200 people look at a story every time that it's on for 24 hours. And I literally got a buyer that same day. And so the power of social media is there, so it is something to invest in. Currently, we repurpose content. So we get a lot of snips from different, because you're a marketing guy, from different podcasts and things that we do. We'll probably have some snips from here. But yeah, we're posting about twice a day. That's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, your team does a very good job with clipping down the podcast clips, repurposing them across different channels. But yeah, the long form YouTube is just another. It's another.
No, YouTube is really the next place right now. I know. That's why we're here. Hello, YouTube.
I like it. And just for the audience, just for fun while you're live, thank you for being here live, by the way.
Thank you.
Just let me know where you tune in to usually. Like, are you usually on Instagram, on TikTok, or on YouTube? I'd love to just throw those on the screen really fast.
Yeah, that's interesting. I am much more on Instagram. That's like a direct shot to my heart. So if you want to DM me there, you're going to get me. Yeah. Yeah. I watch a lot on YouTube now, though. I'm doing a lot of self-education. I find that I'm in the YouTube world.
Yeah. I mean, you can learn. I learned everything about investing on YouTube. I mean,
yes, but it's not linear, so it's frustrating. You're like, I already know this. Skip.
But at least you get chapter markers, right? So it works out.
Yeah.
Okay, another fun social media question is, do you have a separate business and personal social media profile, or do you combine the two?
I ain't got time for that. What are you talking about? I'm already on Facebook and TikTok. Yeah, and YouTube. It's just a lot. Yeah.
I like it. So it's just your personal brand. All of it.
I know. I just spam all my friends. Poor friends.
But
what can we do?
But that's who you are now. And
it is.
A lot of people have this thought in their head where my college friend that I haven't talked to in 15 years is going to think that I'm weird.
Yeah.
But you haven't talked to them in 15 years. So why are you even thinking about them?
That's true. And I still want a referral from them when they buy out of state. That's right.
If you know anyone buying or selling a house, make sure to let me know.
That's right.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Let's move into the last call. Just some last questions I'd like to ask all the guests on the show. Kind of a quick lightning round. But could you share a win and a loss from this week?
Ooh, from this week. Gosh, that's so interesting.
We're November 30. We're about to turn to December of 2020.
Yeah. Gosh, I think being here right now with you feels like such a win. Like it's, later than I normally do anything, but I have a cocktail and I'm having a lot of fun and we're laughing. So I think that's great. A loss I had from today, I don't know if it's officially a loss yet, but it's looking like a loss, is I have been really digging into the creative finance space. So I'm studying up on seller finance and subject to, because interest rates are too high and I want to get deals for my clients. And so I've been working on this deal since like the beginning of November. And I think today it is falling out. And I'm like, ooh, but it's one of those things where you sometimes learn through paying for things and then other times learn through paying for it in time or some other way, right? So the next time I'm going to be dialed in.
I like it. And
yeah,
for me,
painful.
The losses, couple losses. There is a bathroom leak in one of my long-term rentals in Columbus, and the fence is sagging in our Joshua Tree short-term rental. We just got that in last year, so it's an extra CapEx. I know. Damn. I don't know what happened there, but some extra phone calls, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. This one was one that I prefaced you before, but what was the most memorable drink you've ever had? Who was it with? And why was it so memorable?
Yeah. So I made you tell me your most memorable and it jogged my memory. So the one that came up for me was after Burning Man this year. And so Burning Man happens outside of Reno. It's like 3 or 4 hours away. And so I fly in and out of Reno. And so I had come home to the airport. It's almost like going through a portal when you leave Burning Man. You're dusty, you're dirty, you're so open and relaxed. And then you have to like squeeze yourself into this little box of society. And so I'm there like through TSA and I sit at the Vino Volo. They're like a chain that's at all the airports. and I'm just having like a little glass of wine, and the guy next to me just came from the burn, and so we're chatting. But then a bunch of friends from my camp show up, and then everybody starts talking at the bar about their beautiful experiences at Burning Man. And so there are a few other people that didn't come from Burning Man, and we're all just like kumbaya and loving on each other. And it was just like a great, I think, 3 hours before my flight. But yeah, it was such a sweet time.
I like it.
Burning Man. Yeah.
And this question was fun because it brings up a different memory than most
Side.
people will think of.
Yeah. Totally.
I'll give anyone who's live last opportunity to ask Deanna some questions. I'll start with this one is, what are you looking for now, and how can someone add value to you?
Interesting. Yeah. Today, a lot of people pitch me partnerships, and I'm like, nah. But I was pitching it to somebody today. That guy that I talked to in Memphis that I was telling you, he's like doing contracts and corporate rentals and stuff. And I love the idea of being in the stage of my investing portfolio that like I don't have to be the hustle partner anymore. I can say like, hey, can I throw like a down payment at you, but you're going to find this cool like seller finance and then manage it? Like that sounds awesome. So yeah, I think like your investing horizon can be such a long time, and it can change so much. So don't really worry about where you start, because you can end up somewhere completely different.
I love it. That's a fun story.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's levels to it, right?
Totally. Well, like you getting into these crazy syndications and stuff. That's super exciting.
It is yeah. I mean, there's levels to everything, and it's just such a, I don't know, things happen in the weirdest kismet ways almost sometimes.
Yeah.
To where if you just put yourself out there and you do enough of the work, it'll happen. If you just do enough of the work, though.
And how do you know what's enough? Great.
Just keep making it happen. I mean, if it hasn't happened yet, it looks like you got to put your head down some more and keep working. But
yeah, I love
it. Okay. Last question, just from the comments from Ricky. Are there any common MTR tips or advice that you disagree with? That's a fun one.
Interesting.
Also a thinking one too.
Yeah, but I'm like, what are the common tips? I think it's still so open, and you can do so much with it. So I just don't think you need to put yourself in a box. Yeah, I don't know if I have any particular tips. Yeah, I mean, I'd say like the pets thing, I don't think you need to have pets. And I think a lot of people feel like they have to take on pets. So I'm here to tell you that you don't need to do that. But I'm not sure what else. Yeah. Sorry. I wish it was a little more specific. It just didn't jog my memory.
That's okay. I mean, and my opinion on that is that because the space is getting formalized now, is that the best practices are still developing.
Yeah.
And so
that's why you got to test it out. Just try shit. And I'm like, that didn't work. So moving along.
I like it. How can people find you?
Yeah. So Instagram, Zeona McIntyre. You can find me. I'm very searchable. My name is very weird, but I also have a website, zeonamcintyre.com. And so anything new that I'm doing, you'll find there.
I like it. Well, I will link all of those down below in the post. But Zeona, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. You gave so many great answers to a lot of the technical questions. So I hope that everyone found some value out of it today.
Yay. Thanks so much.
And Zeona, if you want to kick back, I will see you in the post show. But for everyone else, I will see you guys on the next episode. See you guys. And